Hey everyone, it's Emily, and one of the great things about collecting physical Nintendo Switch games that many collectors like myself enjoy is that oftentimes a lot of the games come fully on the cartridge, so there's no sort of downloads required. And it kind of helps us sometimes justify rebuying a game we really like in order to have all the content physically on the cart. So buying these packages like the Sword and Shield plus Pokemon Sword expansion is one example, as well as the Breath of the Wild Japanese edition that also included all the DLC on the cart. However, something that myself and many other Switch collectors did not fully anticipate was that collections like these sometimes take up a ton of digital space on our devices. Even though this sounds very counterintuitive for the main purpose of buying collections like these that supposedly have all the content available on the cart itself and doesn't require any downloads, I'll explain how this could actually potentially be quite the digital space hog. So whenever you insert a physical game card into your Nintendo Switch, you're sometimes prompted with a screen like this, telling you that there's some sort of update available, even if you are inserting a game that supposedly has all the DLC and updates on the card itself. But what's really happening here is that sometimes when you have a collection such as the Pokemon Sword and Shield plus expansion pass version, the developers release some sort of general patch to the base game after these collections are released. And how all the Switch systems work when it comes to updating games is that instead of just taking the latest patch and updating that to whatever's on your game cart, they actually go ahead and update all the redundant updates along with the new updates on your device. So if you bought the Pokemon Sword plus expansion pass physical and look at your internal storage management here, you'll notice that there's quite a large download and space being taken up digitally for this game. So instead of just downloading all the subsequent updates that were released after this collection was printed physically, instead has all the DLC as well as all the updates on your digital storage space. So this sounds rather redundant, right? Of why would Nintendo strip away one of the major advantages of owning a physical game and take up so much digital space on your device with redundant material? There's no real clear explanation of why Nintendo has such an inefficient updating system, and this not only affects Switch 1 games, but also potentially many Switch 2 games, especially the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. And I'm holding up Rune Factory and Guardians of Azuma as an example, and kind of one of the main reasons why many people went with the Switch 2 edition, even if they haven't upgraded to a Switch 2 device yet, is that this is backwards compatible and actually has the upgrade on the cart. I was first alerted about this whole hidden digital storage issue thanks to Rune Factory, because a lot of Switch 2 owners who bought the Switch 2 version were really confused about why do they have to download such a large file in order to have the upgrades for the Switch 2 version. And there was some sort of concern about false advertising by the publisher Marvelous, claiming that the upgrade pack was actually on the card itself and didn't require to be downloaded. But the Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade packs are not exempt when it comes to how Nintendo likes to do their updates. So on day one, when Rune Factory released, there was a very small update patch that was provided just to help optimize all versions of the Switch. It was very small, but even though there was a very minor day one patch, how the whole Nintendo systems work when it comes to making updates is that they're not just going to update that very small patch, but instead they're going to update everything. So this includes the Switch 2 upgrade pack, plus all these subsequent updates that are released after launch. So I think what happened with Rune Factory here was kind of igniting a rude awakening of how all these different Switch collections actually work, especially if there are subsequent patches after these collections are released physically. So you may be wondering, why does this all matter? Is this a complete non-issue, especially as long as you're getting all the updates and most of the content is on the cart itself? Does this really matter? Well, fast forward to the Nintendo Switch 2 and how expensive a lot of those external SD cards are. Now, if you want to go for the 1 terabyte option, those are looking like they're going to be upwards of $200 at the moment. And internally, the Switch 2 only has a very limited space, especially if you plan on adding very large and expansive games. A lot of the storage is going to eat up very quickly. And games like, for example, Call of Duty, once that eventually comes over, that's going to take up most of the storage that it's in the internal device itself. And I don't know about you, I don't really want to go about swapping out different SD cards and remembering which one contains my save. This is, I think, an issue, especially for those who are very conscious of how much of their digital storage space they have left. And again, we kind of don't have this advantage anymore of having the game just loaded on the cart where it doesn't need to go on the device itself. Now, how these updates work is not just exclusive to these large collections with the DLC and multiple patches on the cart itself. This is also something that happens with plenty of regular Switch games, and I imagine a lot of Switch 2 games eventually, especially if they're going to have multiple patches down the line. And even if you have the most up-to-date revised cart, if there happens to be some sort of patch that comes out later on, you're going to have to download all of the patches in bulk along with the new one if you want to experience the game with all the patches enabled, and thus taking up more storage space. And even though this wasn't really much of an issue on the Switch 1, I think many of us, again, didn't really know about this hidden storage issue. With the Switch 2, I anticipate this really kind of backfiring, especially with how we're going to be managing our storage devices, because a lot of those games, especially brand new ones, I don't think are going to be super optimized for the Switch 2 and just take up a ton of space that make it very expensive, or we're just going to have to delete a lot of games all the time, which could be a little bit of a pain. And also just make the portability of the Switch a little bit less desirable. We could get away with it with some of the home consoles that are just stationary at our desk or TV. But when you have a portable device that you constantly have to manage its data and delete and reinstall games all the time, even if you're in an area that doesn't have any Wi-Fi connection, there are some risks and kind of less desirable outcomes overall. Despite all the issues around how Nintendo does their updates and how much hidden storage it actually takes up in our devices, there's still plenty of advantages for why one would choose to buy collections such as these, including of how they work offline. You're still able to play all of these games offline with the DLC and various patches that are included on the cart itself. And you also don't necessarily need to play all the patches that come out after these collections are released. A lot of the patches that are kind of added after the fact are often very minor, and you may not even kind of notice their impact at all. So there's still plenty of advantages for physical media collectors in buying these. It's just worth noting that there is some hidden digital storage management issues regarding some of these games and how they go about downloading the latest patch. And I wanted to quickly mention that I recently opened channel memberships here on YouTube as a way to support the channel. I have various options and tier levels with different perks to each of them. And I wanted to thank all those who have recently joined, and a special shout out to my Orbment architects, Dr. God and Calix. Thank you so much for all the support. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe took away something from it. This is all new to me, and I wanted to make a video on this topic because I just saw a lot of people complaining about the large download that's required on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Rune Factory. So I just kind of wanted to clarify what's actually happening. And while the game itself and the Switch 2 upgrade is on the cart, it's kind of going through an inefficient downloading in order to do the latest patch updates for the game and make it a little bit more optimized. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and until my next video, bye guys.